Hello, I'm Simulator Dirk and welcome back to Trainz. And we are on a train. I've probably spent about 2 hours at the moment off camera getting to this point. We are actually in England. We are on the route somewhere between King's Cross and Newcastle. But if the inside of this loco looks familiar to Australian viewers, we're in a what is technically a heritage diesel locomotive, but it is still in service. Originally the CL class for the Commonwealth Railways, originally. This Bulldog design later morphed into the CLP class, which was used on passenger trains, mainly the Indian Pacific. And then the CLF, which was used for freight. So we'll go out and we'll have a look outside and we'll introduce the consist to you. Now, these are both CLP class. These are both CLP class locos. CLP 9 and CLP 12. I might just go back in cab because that's really affecting my audio. So CLP 9, which is the red loco, and CLP 12, which is the rear white loco. They're both currently operated by SSR, which is Southern Short Haul Railroad. While they do have some of their own freight services, they often specialise in things such as rolling stock transfers, track work, locos for track work and that sort of thing. Now, these were originally in Australian national colours of the green and gold and used to haul the Indian Pacific. In fact, when I went on the Indian Pacific in 1997, two of these locos were on the train. It was before Australian National weren't operating the train anymore, and it came under the tourism group, which it basically is today. And then Pacific National NR class locos, basically, who'll call it. So it's a shortened Indian Pacific consist. We'll go outside. So CLP 9. Actually, what we might do, yeah, that'll make it a bit easier for the audio. CLP 9, which is the red loco, is in the livery of Aussie, which is a Australian railway modelling company. And the CLP 12, which is in white, there's a couple of CLPs around in white, CLP 12 and CLP 13, which has been nicknamed Casper. Now we've got a shortened Indian Pacific consist on board, and so we're about to go for a ride. It took about 2 hours to get to this point, and we will see what happens. I have moved the train a tiny bit. It's not necessarily easy just to say, okay, I want CLP 9, I want CLP 12, I want a group of Indian Pacific cars, and I want to go from King's Cross to Newcastle in England, of course, not King's Cross in Sydney to Newcastle in the Newcastle Hunter region of New South Wales. But this will have to do for a moment. So this is a test. I do have a Australian looking scenario loaded and downloaded, and the fact that we're even at this point, to me, compared to my previous experiences, is fantastic. So let's unpause and let's go into the loco. And we're just going to drive in easy mode. And this... well, yeah, we'll just go outside for a moment. So the classic... Well, I didn't want to get that close to it, but here we go. The classic Bulldog design. Units such as CLP9 and 13 find themselves on a range of trains these days. So... So let's get the wheels in motion. So here we are. So here we are, just trying to make some adjustments to the audio on the fly. So we're out in the middle of effectively nowhere. In the realistic stakes, I think the Locos are very, very close to that overhead wiring. We'll go move side on. So very, very close. So these CL class locomotives for what was Commonwealth Railways was basically purchased for trains such as the Indian Pacific. When the Indian Pacific started in the 1970s, or 1970 in fact, was when the standard gauge was all over from Sydney to Perth. Before that, you had to change trains basically at every state border as the gauges were incompatible basically. But it took until the 1990s for trains to actually go through with the same loco or same locos potentially across the country. For many years, even on standard gauge, each system attached its locos to the train. But now in the modern era, the same locos could potentially stay on the train for the entire trip and just get refueled en route. So what I'm just trying to do, I'm just basically trying to line up for a screenshot. So here we are. I don't even know if we're heading towards London or Newcastle at this point. So let's go in the cab and let's have a look and tell you about some of the features that I've managed to work out so far. We'll pick up a bit of speed as well. So this is what the interior of a CLP Loco looks like today. This Loco is by Hotbox Content, and you can see that they've very helpfully put a coffee mug in front of the driver. Now, unlike what we were looking at in previous episodes, based on American locos, Australian locos usually have the driver sitting on the left-hand side, and then the assistant driver, the fireman, the second person, call them what you will. They sit on the other side, and I'll just pan across. So they sit on the other side, and as I mentioned earlier, their main job is to assist the driver, especially with things such as coupling, uncoupling trains, operating points if need be in yards, and also to act as a second pair of eyes. In things such as road knowledge and signal recognition and that sort of stuff. And it's often where if somebody new is learning how to drive, the person in the right hand seat will be a driver trainer, telling the driver what's going on. So if we have a look at the driver's workstation, I'll move the camera a bit and just double check to see that everything's in frame. Yes, it is. So all these gauges is what you would see in a normal loco. So we are driving in easy mode at the moment, so you won't necessarily see the controls change if I move them. So considering that these units are basically from the 60s and 70s, of course they've had upgrades on the way through, but they are an older unit. So you got your brake systems on the left for both the train and the locomotive. And then you've got a reverser, and then your power, power, 8 notches of power on the right hand side. Some gauges telling us about brake pressures, etc., and how you're powering. Speedo, of course. Now the big white screen on the right hand side there, I'll just move the camera slightly so it's a bit more obvious. The big unit with the white screen, that's the train radio, the ICE radio, which is fairly standard actually in Australia in locos and a lot of passenger trains, but not all of them. So it means this unit could potentially operate on any standard gauge track in Australia where it's been authorised to do so. So it can hook into any communication system that it needs to, depending on the area. So it doesn't matter if you're in Western Australia on the west coast, or if you're in New South Wales and Victoria, or Queensland on the east coast, or going up to Darwin or Alice Springs in the Northern Territory. You can always connect to a signalling signaller or a train controller, so you can communicate with them. Some of the areas where train order working has been fitted, the train can actually receive authorities electronically, which is rather cool, because we're talking about places in the outback where there won't be signallers, but for instance, if you're in the middle of the Nullarbor Plain, you're being controlled by train controllers in Adelaide. And so rather than having to write train order authorities down, they can be sent electronically, and they can also be cancelled electronically as well. So I'm hoping over time to give you a look at some various Australian, and this is probably going to be the focus more than the British stuff or the American stuff or the European stuff, which we're seeing a lot of on Train Sim World and Train Simulator, which is quite frankly easier to operate. There is a big learning curve, and considering this is only day 2 of operating trains, even though the episodes come out weekly, I think I'm doing okay. I'd prefer it to be easier, of course, and easier to find out the information, but to be able to even do this, to have a test train, 2 Australian locomotives and a series of Australian passenger cars, I'm quite enjoying it. So let's go outside and enjoy the ambience for a while, and it's interesting, I can see a semaphore signal there. Alright, that's a caution signal. Oh, hang on, nah. We've already passed the caution signal, so we should be coming up to... I was just relying on the HUD more than anything at the bottom left-hand side, which I know you probably can't see. Now, I haven't set up a timetabled path or anything like that, so we may have to just stop at this signal and see what happens, which is not that far away. I actually didn't think... and I think as well, based on the scenario, or this, they call them sessions rather than scenarios. Based on the sessions, I think this is like the 70s or 80s. So we'll still see semaphore signals like we can see up ahead here. So there are colour light signals. And this is where the design of the Australian loco may not be super. So waiting here is realistically fine. So there's our locos. So we can see our semaphore signals there. And we could also see our colour light signals there. Nothing is happening at the moment in this direction. So we can see that this line ends. I'll go back in cab. We can see this line ends. What I might do, actually go to the map view. All right, this line ends So it's the end of a 4-track section. So here we are with our short little train, our little test train. So if I want to see, go to map view, there's us there. I want to see if I can where our next train is. Okay, so there's a couple there, Conce's 57 and 55. Let's go and see. Now, I haven't changed any of the trains. I've just added the one that we're using. So I can see a little bit further up the line, there's another yard. Line ahead is unsignalled. That's interesting. No train approaching. So maybe we can, was it J? Oh, so we were able to actually change the signal ourselves. Alright, so we've managed to change the signal ourselves. The computer agrees with us that it's okay. Of course, this is not how it works in the real world, but so it looks like we've got greens all the way now, so... And indeed, there may have been places where you would have had to have changed the points, and that would also change the signals yourselves. There is a signal box coming up here, so you may have needed to have called the signal box and say, okay, I'm at signal XYZ. It's not as remotely controlled then, and I'm assuming the 70s and 80s we're talking about here. This era of this map compared to now, where you can talk to a train controller thousands of miles away, and as I was saying earlier, do it electronically. So let's go outside, have a look. I am going to stop commentary for a moment, and let's just enjoy the train from the outside, shall we? So we're motoring along nicely now. So I haven't seen another train yet. There are other trains around. One thing that I did notice is that there's no more overhead wiring. And I still don't know if we're heading towards London or towards Newcastle. Of course, in the 70s, electrification only would have went so far. Okay. So while we go back in cab for a moment, one of the interesting things about this is the way that you have to set things up. And I know that I keep on talking about Train Sim World and Train Simulator Classic, but it just works. So let's say I had access to this pack in Train Sim World or Train Simulator Classic. All I would have to say is that I want this train, these locos, to go from London to Newcastle, and I want it to sound like 2 CLP locomotives, and off we go. So when I was setting up the locos, I'm thinking to myself, that actually doesn't sound like a CLP. It doesn't sound like an Australian train. It sounds like a British train. So I go into the settings and I see that, hang on, we got another train. It's so what I noticed is that it sounded like a British train. So I actually had to go into the menu and edit it and say, I want my CLP to sound like a CLP. And then I had to actually go through and find the class of locomotive, all the sounds and everything already there, but I had to manually select the sounds. So hypothetically, if I had and I do have installed an 81 class locomotive from New South Wales, I could get this train to sound like an 81 class. Another train. So hypothetically, if I wanted this train to sound like a 81 class, I could do that. I would just select the 81 class file rather than the CLP. Or if I did want it to sound like a 47 class, a British Rail 47 class, I could do that too. And needless to say, I don't want to do that. But it is interesting. The amount of customization that you can do obviously is fantastic. Going underneath these bridges, I didn't think that the English loading gauge and the Australian loading gauge were that much difference. Now there is a difference. The track gauge is the distance between the two rails. 4 feet 8.5 inches or 1435 millimeters. That's standard gauge. And that's the same anywhere around the world, standard gauge. Where it differs though is the loading gauge or the kinetic envelope of the train. When you talk about the amount of room that the train occupies compared to, like when we go under a bridge, you'll notice here that it's very tight going underneath a bridge because this is an Australian loco. So based on what I can see, when an Australian loco goes underneath the bridge, the American loading gauge is very much different, even though the track gauge is the same. So that enables American trains to be a lot bigger than the English and the Australian standards. So you would not be able to fit an American loco on this route authentically. So let's continue outside, shall we? So I've just figured out how to turn the heads up display at the bottom of the screen off, which is so much better for screen caps, etc. Now, an interesting fact to notice here is that we're going 69 miles an hour. Nice. But this is pretty much close to the top speed that the CL class and later the CLP, CLF classes they actually had. So while the track speed is 100 miles an hour or 160 kilometres an hour, there's no way that these locos would be and can do this type of speed. But we'll see. We'll actually see if, due to the wonders of simulation, if they can actually go. Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that. And I am a little bit skeptical. It's it, and I know it's Wikipedia, but the maximum speed of 130 kilometres an hour for the CLs as they were originally built, and CLF for the freighters, and 140 for CLPs. And these are CLPs. So hypothetically, according to this article at least, this train can do 87 miles an hour or 140 kilometres an hour. So let's try it. Just for the conversion, 69 miles an hour in kilometres is 111 kilometres an hour. So it's because I was thinking that it's like a lot of other locos where the maximum speed's 115, even on things that are a lot more modern. So let's see if we can get up to, what did I say? 87 miles an hour. Let's see if we can do that. We're applying 84% power. So let's go. Let's just apply max power and we'll go outside and we'll see what happens. So we did have it over 90 miles an hour then. So I have reduced the power back up a little bit. Another thing to consider, not only is in a loco hold environment, not only the maximum speed of the loco itself, let's stay with my figures of 115 kilometres an hour. Now, there's a few factors in play here where the train can actually do 115 kilometres an hour. The loco may be capable of it, but is the track. Not all tracks, as we've seen, not all tracks are rated up to 115 kilometres an hour. So the train will have to do whatever the actual track speed is. In this case, it's 100 mile an hour or 160 kilometre an hour track. You know, it's level, it's flat. So we got no problems there. So let's use this example. Can the train do 115 kilometres an hour because of the locos? Yes, it can. Can it do 115 kilometres an hour because of the track speed? Yes, it can. The next thing to consider are the carriages behind it, because we're talking about loco-hauled carriages here. Can the loco-hauled carriages, in this case passenger cars, do 115 kilometres an hour? Yes, they can, so that's good. But if this was hauling freight, are the freight carriages good for 115 kilometres an hour? In some cases, they would be, and in other cases, as we pass another semaphore signal that's clear, we've dropped down to our speed limit changed, and I didn't notice. So I have dropped the speed. There's many freight wagons where they can't do 115. There's a lot around, for instance, that can do 80, and they can only do 80. So even though the loco might be good for 115 and the track might be good for 115, the wagons aren't. And there's also some freight carriages in particular that can have a faster speed if they're empty compared to if they're loaded. So we've gone back to 100 miles an hour, so we'll just open her up again. So there's lots of factors to consider. Is the loco good for 115? Yes. Is the track good for 115? Yes. Are the wagons or the carriages good for 115? Maybe. Then, of course, you have to consider the area, the environment in which the train's operating. Even if the track speed is 115, if there's other trains around, well, you might not be able to do 115. So there's lots of variables. There's a lot of places where, hypothetically, you could run around at 115 kilometres per hour all day. You might not actually be able to do it. And then, of course, there's your task that you're doing. An empty coal train is going to be faster than a loaded coal train, for instance. Or, if they can run as fast, it will take the loaded train more time and more power to get up to that speed compared to if it's empty. If you're a passenger train, are you stopping all stations? Are you an express train? Are you an interstate passenger train like this one is? So there's lots of different factors to consider. Let's go outside again. So things are going rather nicely. Still got no idea where I am. One thing that I've noticed, and I'll try it again, but I want to make reference to it now. We've got our cab view, which is this one. Then we have our chase. I think this is chase view. And so you can set that. So if you want to look at the other side. Now this could be somewhere in Western New South Wales right now. Then you have this view. What view is that? That's roaming view. So now if we have a look at the map, try and find out where I am. Okay, so I'm coming up. So we're coming up to Peterborough. Or, sorry, the Peterborough Fly Ash Loop. We'll be coming through Peterborough Station shortly. And there's a few different trains around there. Warrington Junction. I used to live near Warrington in Sydney. Woodcroft, another name of a suburb that's familiar to me, Helpston. Like, my knowledge of English geography is not super for some of these smaller places. But in the meantime, let's see if we can see what Dave is doing. Because each of these trains is also named after the driver who's on them. So this is actually... Oops. Still learning how to control this thing. So here we are. This is an English loco. 37 class, 37194. So if we have a look inside that cab, so this train has a maximum speed of 60 miles an hour. So who's that? That's Damon. So behind Damon is Dave. So this is Dave's train. A 47 class. So Dave's got a couple of 47 class locos. Can we drive Dave's train for him? No, we can't. So we have to find my... So we'll have to find my train on the map again. Now, Dave and Damon are well and truly away from where I am. They're many kilometres into the future. Newark, I think we've seen. Am I going the right way? The area that this map covers is huge, and That takes us back to Dave and Damon. Okay. I'll just move this into the center so you can see it. Oh, I can actually do that. Harry's not on a train. Greg is in a class 105 diesel multiple unit. Philippi is there. Thomas. So these are all waiting for various trains to go by. Oh, let's have a look at where Sean is. If we can. Where's Sean? Okay, there's Sean. Well, there's Sean's train. So we're in another train. This is a HST, a high-speed train. Not as detailed as the Train Sim World ones or Train Sim Classic, but there we go. So that's where Sean is. How did I pull that up? Driver Control Center. All right. Greg's there. Philippi's there. Thomas is there. Vaughan is there. Sean's there. Here's the one we just saw. Jeff. Dave. Damon we just saw. Frankie's in another HST. David. Steve. My driver. Zombie has to wait for an hour. Poor Zombie. Louise. That's my train. So let's go back to my train. And where's my train? Oh, there it is. We went through Warrington and I missed it. Wow, this is a different view. Because we've zoomed out a bit. There we go. We'll stay on this view for a while. Now this is very much a shortened India Pacific consist that I've just done for testing purposes. Now the Indian Pacific runs once a week between Sydney and Perth in each direction. And during the summer season, which is where we are at the moment, they've been trialling running like a 32 carriage train in each direction. Now the Indian Pacific no longer is public transport and really hasn't been for quite some time. It's a very much tourist train now with lots of emphasis on the fine dining on the train and also off-train tours, which when I went on it in 1997 really wasn't a thing compared to now, where it's actually built into the timetable. So while the train's at the station and it's getting reloaded or refueled or rewatered or whatever it is, the passengers, should we really even call the passengers, customers, the clientele, the upmarket clientele, are off having a 3-hour tour of Adelaide or Broken Hill or Kalgoorlie, etc. So some nice scenery, nice trains. Because of my lack of English geographic knowledge, I still don't know if I'm heading towards London or Newcastle at this point. But this very much gives you a sample of what's possible on trains. And now that I've got it figured out a little bit and how it works, I've never been able to get to this point before. So on the next episode, we are going to go into an Australian map called Donnybrook, which I've been doing a bit of reading about. It's about a 20 kilometre map with various trains, various industries, and we're going to explore that on the next episode and see where we go from that. I've had to download a lot of trains, which is awesome. These trains on screen, by the way, I did pay for, both the locomotives and the Indian Pacific carriages, whereas there was a whole heap that I downloaded that we'll start to see from the next episode. So that will be cool. So I've just learnt that if you go away from the locomotives a bit like this one, the audio is not as bad with me competing with the audio of the locos compared to if I was up close to it. Yeah, I'm really battling there. And that's actually good. Like if I'm back here or even further, yes, you can hear the train, but it's a lot quieter because you are actually further back from the train compared to if you were right here. Of course, it would be noisier. As I mentioned on the last episode, I do actually enjoy seeing the train that I'm driving. Are we approaching a red signal? I think we are. I shouldn't have shut off that quickly, but I think we're approaching a red signal. And we're going through a red signal. And in other simulators that I'm used to, that would be a game over. Because I was just talking and not paying attention, and interestingly, it's not game over. If we have a look at the map, oh, we are approaching. Now, we saw Dave earlier. That's why the signal was a stop, because Dave will move it so it's a little bit in the... Oops, maybe that way a little bit. So here, let's have a look so I can see what you can see. So, this is where free roam's not the best. So there's my train that we've managed to pull up. And the reason why, because if we go down the track a bit, that train there, it could have been very, very bad. So we'll just creep up to it. Because what we've effectively done, yes, we've passed the signal at danger, and the reason that it's a danger is because there's a train in the next section. Now, These trains up here are timetabled to do whatever they do. Under the session or scenario, if you want to think of it like that. I'm just an extra train that I plomped in. Now it's interesting. On the HUD, the heads-up display at the bottom of the screen, which you may not be able to see, it's actually showing that the next signal is clear, but it's not showing the train that's immediately ahead of me, which is rather interesting. Now, there is another scenario which is totally legal. Now, let's say, for instance, I didn't go through the signal at danger like I did. But let's say old mate's train had broken down here. And so they've saw that I'm the next train and that I can handle it to give him a hand. So they would have to authorise me to pass that signal and stop and then come and attach and push him out, which is totally fine. We'll stop there. So let's say that old mate's train has actually failed. Well, then it could be totally fine under authority, and there's a bit of coordination. There's a bit of coordination, of course, to be done. But let's see if we can actually... So hypothetically, can we can detach these Indian Pacific cars here. So now if we zoom in, we've actually detached from the train carriages here. But can we attach... So it looks like we can't attach to Dave's train. Let's see if we can push it anyway. Or if it'll say you have collided. So that's where we might leave it. We'll turn couple mode off. So that's our trial episode done. I have been Simulated Irk. You have been wonderful. Thanks for watching. And bye bye for now. Ta-ta and farewell.